Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Swiswiki. Coming up.
And obviously it's very distressing. It's a really key period for us. Tourism is very important to Fiji.
A holiday in Fiji turns into a nightmare with tourists feeling ill. Also the do's and don'ts of pounamu and...
Engage Pacifica students. They may have a different experience of those values that Pacifica children bring into classroom. So there's always a mismatch.
Kiwi teachers experience village life in Samoa. Fijian authorities are scrambling to find out what led to 7 people falling ill after drinking cocktails at a 5-star resort on Saturday afternoon. All were taken to hospital where their condition is now stable, with one of the 7 reportedly returning home to Australia. It follows a suspected mass methanol poisoning in Laos last month that left 6 tourists dead and several more, including a New Zealander, sick. Fiji's Ministry for Tourism says they think this is an isolated incident, and resort staff have assured them the ingredients of the drinks were not substituted or altered in any way. One guest says his friend who had a pina colada on Saturday is still too ill to get up. Caleb Fotheringham has more.
7 people had been drinking poolside cocktails at the high-end Warwick Resort on the Coral Coast before they fell ill. The group included 4 Australian tourists, 1 American and 2 other foreigners who live in Fiji. One guest, who does not want to be named, says his friend is still severely ill and unable to get up. He believes the drinks were tampered with. His statement was voiced.
We have not received any proper communication from the Warwick team and just asked one of my friends to sign an indemnity form.
He says the group all had 1 drink at the adult pool bar, but it was only those who ordered pina coladas who fell ill.
The hospital and doctors were the saving grace. They were really overwhelmed but tried their best to get everyone stable and moved out to Lautoka ICU overnight.
The chief executive of Tourism Fiji, Brent Hill, says all the guests who were taken to hospital are now in a stable condition. He says the circumstances are different to what happened in Laos, where 6 tourists died just weeks ago from methanol poisoning.
It's a little bit of a mystery in the sense that a nice resort would experience something like this. It's quite unusual. We've never had it before, and in terms of the numbers of tourists coming through, it's a very small isolated case.
Mr. Hill says he's concerned about the impact the suspected alcohol poisoning will have on the industry.
As soon as it was reported, we jumped on top of it. We don't know the cause yet. That will help, as soon as we know that. And obviously it's very distressing. It's a really key period for us. Tourism is very important to Fiji. And we treat these things very, very seriously.
However, Mr. Hill says there is no reason to believe anything malicious has occurred.
Generally, wherever you travel around the world, you always want to be, and even at home for that measure, you want to be careful about what you consume. But in terms of the volume of people that have come through Fiji this year and now, the risk is very, very small.
Fiji's Permanent Secretary of Health, Jemasia Tundravu, says they still do not know the cause of the poisoning yet.
The toxicology is currently being done by the police, and they'll release their own investigation results. That won't come from us.
All the 7 people who fell ill were transferred to the larger Lautoka Hospital from Singatoka Hospital because of the severity of their condition. All are thought to now be stable, with reports that 1 has flown to Australia. The Ministry of Tourism and Civil Aviation says the hotel has assured them that they have not substituted ingredients or altered the quality of the drinks. It says the hotel is fully cooperating with authorities. A spokesperson for Warwick, Fiji, says they have nothing to disclose and an investigation is underway.
Pounamu is a prized taonga for both Māori and non-Māori alike, and increasingly it's gifted for significant life events and celebrations. But as interest around pounamu grows, what are the tikanga surrounding the buying, wearing and caring for it? In-depth Māori journalist Alice Stewart spoke to the experts about the do's and don'ts around pounamu.
Gathered from the cold waters of awa up and down the west coast of the South Island, pounamu begins as a raw piece of stone. Once found, it is carved and cut into an intricate design, taking on a deep, personal meaning for the wearer. Joel Masters is the person who carves those designs and has been doing so for almost 15 years. Based in Rotorua, he has been surrounded by Māori art forms for much of his life. Now he is working to revive traditional practices. Over time, he says perceptions of what is tika, or right, for how to treat pounamu has changed.
I guess we're redefining and making our own as we're going, because a lot of the stuff that we were doing was Western.
He says one of the biggest misconceptions around pounamu is that you can't buy it for yourself, with some believing it might bring bad luck. That idea, he says, was created to encourage tourists visiting Aotearoa to buy pounamu for their relatives back home, rather than a traditional practice.
It was actually a Pākehā marketing method put onto us, and I did some research too, and I was like, there's no evidence of actually te ao Māori.
Fellow carver Timothy Morin runs his own carving workshop in Nelson. Previously a plumber and builder by trade, Morin taught himself to carve, going deep into researching traditional practices and methods of carving. He agrees with Masters and says you can totally buy pounamu for yourself.
Our tūpuna definitely traded pounamu. It was traded as a commodity, and it was the best commodity. Great warriors, great ariki, great tohunga have pounamu.
Another commonly asked question both carvers face is what to do if your pounamu breaks. Here's Joel Masters again.
I would repair it only if the structural integrity is there, but otherwise if it's broken, I'm just like, hey, he tohu tērā, tērā kaka hangaia te tai taonga hau.
He suggests that it might be a sign to get a new taonga. Timothy Morin says because pounamu was traditionally used by Māori to make tools, his ancestors were practical in their approach to broken pounamu.
Pounamu that was broken by a tūpuna were always repurposed because it was the most sought after stone. There was no such thing as throwing stuff away back then.
The question of whether a new pounamu taonga should be blessed is one of the most complex, Masters says. He uses karakia in his mahi every day to clear the tapu, so believes getting the piece blessed separately isn't essential.
For starters, you've made the connection with me. You've obviously come this far with me. You feel safe in my hands. I don't feel there's no juju on it.Oi anō, I do a karakia every morning before I start my day.
Morin, who also uses karakia when creating his taonga, says each person has a different perspective depending on how they were brought up.
There's a lot of different beliefs within hapu, within iwi, within whānau. So, kei te pai, each to their own. You don't have to go and do that.
Both carvers say as long as you have the right intent and care for your pounamu, it can last a lifetime and be passed down from generation to generation.
A long-running education initiative has given hundreds of New Zealand teachers a chance to experience life in a Samoan village and become more aware of the different learning needs of Pasifika students. Lea li'i e Dr. Tufulasi Tsaleni, a senior education lecturer at the University of Canterbury, takes the educators to his village. Lea li'i e told Caleb Fotheringham he got the idea from visiting various schools in New Zealand and saw a need for Pasifika education outcomes to improve.
There's a challenge there. There's an issue, a lot of issues regarding what schools, leadership and teachers in schools are trying to meet the learning outcomes for Pasifika. It is not simple. I think what I found out in those early years in that role was the challenge for teachers to be able to engage Pasifika students in learning. And that comes down to, I guess, the lack of knowledge of the culture of Pasifika learners. Pasifika children bring those cultural values to schools, and teachers may find it hard to, to find ways and strategies to engage Pasifika students. They may have a different experience of those values that Pasifika children bring into a classroom. So there's always a mismatch in terms of their own pedagogical practices they use to meet learning outcomes for students. So from 2003 to 2019, those trips, those initiatives have been from that time on, and was very much about that.
And this has obviously been going on for quite a while. I know you said you had the break during COVID, but really it's been going on for about 20 years. So what effect has it had on the teachers, the principals, the educators that you have taken from New Zealand to Samoa? What have they learned?
I started off, 2003, trip 2005, 2007, 2009, 2011, 2013, 2015. So those trips were basically focused on teachers and principals and specialized teachers in schools. In 2016, I changed the focus to students. Those students who are trained to become teachers. So that was the focus from 2016, 17, 18, 19. Focus on what we call initial teacher educators. So the findings has been amazing. Moved by, I guess, the voices of some of these teachers and principals. So often now they always sort of send some messages back with words of gratitude for the project, for what the project has done, a difference it has made to their pedagogical practice in the classroom. I guess their understanding of Pacifica worldviews in terms of, I guess, Samoan values that Pacifica children bring into the classroom.
These teachers that you take to the village and on these trips, how exposed before they go on these trips are they to Pacifica culture?
Well, I mean, I guess I would say probably 95% of these participants have not been exposed to Pacifica culture before. As you know, that most of these educators are from the South Island, so there's less exposure really to Pacifica culture here. I think lucky that we have what we call Polynesian festivals and things like that happening in schools. Not as much as we, I guess, teachers were exposed to, I guess, in Auckland and other part of the country up north. So the Malanga really was very much a gateway for these educators to taste first time, really to expose to the culture. I put a lot of emphasis on setting the environment back in my own village. I guess I set up my family and my village back in Samoa. I did a lot of work around building relationship with the village back home for them to understand and aware of the of my passion, of the challenge that I see with these teachers and what I would like to offer for our own Pacifica children here. And I always say to them, it's not the fault of these educators. I guess it's the lack of exposure to culture. And I think this is why it was so needed for educators to expose to the culture and I guess taking them into the heart of the village. What can they can find is the authenticity, the authentic experience that they see firsthand. And that was something that was remarkable, that was powerful experience for these educators.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā sui fua.